Peace, peace, peace. Welcome everyone, of course, to another session of enlightenment and transformation, or another session of community. I'll work it out at some point. But yeah, I hope everyone is, or I will everyone, has rise with power and clarity and definitely conviction. Conviction that you are in the right place at the right time and doing the right things and feeling the right things and uh, all that other good stuff. All right, we're dealing with Frida, on this day, or the day of quarreling, or the day of really making our case known and making our positioning known, as we're moving forward through the strong end. And, I wanted to, I'm not going to make this a long segment. I'm really working on compressing the segments because they need not be longer than 45 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes. All right. So we're going to really start to compress them, which I warned you all about. So there's no big surprises there, right? I warned you that we'd be, you know, making them a bit smaller going forward. But yeah, so I wanted to address uh, a simple but a staggering concept and idea this dawning. As I've seen some things. Like I said, a lot of times when I'm doing certain segments or certain kinds of segments, uh, essentially what I'm doing is sometimes addressing some of the more common questions or quandaries that I come across in my work. Well, it's all ministerial work at the end of the day, but whether it be through counseling sessions or sometimes just through conversation, or sometimes me noticing the type of uh, questions that are more commonly addressed, through the different mediums that we have, and certain ones may leave an impression because they come through so often. They really represent what people are struggling to accomplish in some of the areas that people are struggling to achieve in. So a lot of times what that does is that may dictate um, what it is that we may cover and what we may imaginatively explore, through this social medium. So this Friday will be no different in terms of what I would like to fire up in the organisms of your intelligence. And I wanted to speak a little bit about, the ego. I know it seems like, well, he's already spoken about the ego. Yes. And he has to keep speaking about the ego because it's still a huge stumbling block. I mean, if all things were, just lighten something up here. If all things were, perfect and in right order, yeah, technically I'd only have to speak about, things one time. But despite the amount of assurance that we give to ourselves that we learn things the first time. You just got to tell it to me once and I got it. That's usually not the case. Sadly. I don't know if I'll say sadly, but historically, as those sharing the likeness with human beings, um, sometimes it takes repetition for us to finally actually get something, and not just repetition, but coming at things from different angles and roaming through the different caverns of our minds, and seeing where the bottleneck is, where the blockages are. Sometimes we got old stones and gravel, and packed up clay and mud and different caverns that the water needs to flow. Our pipes need to be cleaned out, our mental pipes. So, like I said, we have to fire up those organisms to clean them out. So, one of the issues, let me get right into it, that's so common, and I think it's a simple issue, but it's a major issue because it's a major blockage that I notice many people have, is the inability to relinquish a system of thinking and a mainstay and a protocol of whether it be morality or perspective and worldview that was purposely engineered and given to them to keep them disempowered. You know, some of you sometimes, will say, man, Chief, I know the work that you do is very draining. It is, but I'm going to tell you the draining part. The draining part is not all of the funerals I may do, the burial services. It's not all of the naming services. It's not all of the extra spiritual work that I do just out of uh, personal concern for people in the community. Uh, it's not all the readings. It's not all of the enlightenment and transformation shows, and all of the spiritual or the marital consultations and counseling, or the rites of passage programs, or all of the different things that I have my hand in. The draining and depleting part is the warring against individuals' egos. That's the tiring part. That's the tiring part. Anything else and everything else can be dealt with strength and surety. But fighting back and warring against, and having to overcome and push through and cut through and scrape through and chip through the egos of individuals, that's the depleting part. That's why you always hear me say I prefer to work with children. I don't really enjoy working with adults that much. That's the truth of it. I know it may sound a little mean, especially because I know there's a lot of you listening who enjoy the work that we do together. But no, it's not as much fun for me as as it is for you at times, because a lot of times adults like to learn things through war and antagonism. You teach them something and they want to fight, 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 and they say, "Well, I know I fight, but I think about it later." That's just stupid. It's just really stupid and disrespectful. Children won't do that. Children will ask intelligent questions and responsible questions until they decide either that they agree with you or they disagree with you. But it's done responsibly. Adults don't do it responsibly. They don't ask critical questions or responsible questions. They just throw up emotions and attitude and historical defenses. So the depleting part is warring against that. And of course, when you're warring against their ego, sometimes their ego is trying to revive and resuscitate your defeated ego or your controlled and managed ego. Okay. So the idea of fighting against that, the idea of trying to maintain a position, a false position, and really a hollow position, is one that's much older and much more engineered than some of you may realize or want to realize. I wanted to address that for a moment. And willfully, this will reach those who need it the most. And usually with subjects like this, it will be ignored by, by those who want it the least. When you start getting into ideas and topics like this, a lot of people don't like talking about this, and they kind of zone out. When is he going to start giving us spells and rituals again and speaking in Yoruba and Zulu and all these different languages so I can have that again? Because that's so healing to my soul. Feels so good. Yeah. So let's look at some history here. And what we want to look at is mythological history, because, like how you often hear me say, replace certain words with other words in order to open up your understanding and to get a more profound sense and standing on some of the things that you're dealing with. So you don't always have an understanding, so knowledge is not always standing on top of you and you're underneath it, but you want it to be alive inside of you. You want to have that understanding, and then sometimes you also need an overstanding. So you're approaching your wisdom and your information or your knowledge from different angles. You're claiming it from different angles. It's an important thing. So oftentimes I tell you in a simpler way, whatever this society or the Anglosphere, Western society gives you, just flip it upside down. Whatever they tell you to do, do. Whatever they tell you not to do, do that. Or whatever they tell you to do, don't do. And whatever they do tell you to do or not to do, do that. Okay? Just flip it upside down, because anything that this society gives you is not for your liberation. It's not for your empowerment. So a lot of times, like I said, when we're coming into our journey and we're trying to intuitively find out about ourselves, we're using the tools that were given to us by a society that deliberately keeps us away from our internal leadership, keeps us under the control of their overlords, or they are the overlords. And that makes sense. If I was a parasitic elite, I would be doing the exact same thing. It's called warfare. And warfare is waged on different levels. You have economic warfare, psychological warfare, emotional warfare, physical warfare. There's so many different forms and levels to engage a person and to defeat a person. And once you become very aware of all of the different tenets and components of that person, you see, so like the more you become more self-aware, the more you become aware of your power. But the more self-aware you become, you also become more aware of your vulnerabilities. So if you have people who have taken time to study you, maybe they've studied you for 25, 30, 40 years. They're still studying you. Studied you for 1,000 years. They become very, and you haven't taken the same time and energy to study yourself. They become very, very interested and very, very capable of learning the different ways that you communicate with your genius and you communicate with your power, and they can figure out some very effective ways, to control your communication with your power, your communication with your higher self, your communication with your genius. So it's key to understand why this is present, why this notion, why this idea of suppression is present. And I've referenced this before, but sometimes I have to repeat it in a way where I'm not just referencing it, but I'm sitting on it for a little while, or standing on it for a little while, a little longer, to emphasize its importancy and our journey and what it is that we're doing. So if we go back in our thinking, or if we allow ourselves to travel a little bit through antiquity, there are some things that we'll find. There are some things that we'll see, in particular as it relates to psychology. And what I mean by that, and I've often said, if you want to understand the psychology of a people, learn their mythology. That's the way you understand the psychology of a people. You must learn their mythology. You cannot get around it. So when you're living in the Anglosphere and operating within the Anglosphere, it's important to understand and understand and overstand the mythology that gave birth to the mind of the Anglosphere. Because through mythology, you get to see the workings of an individual's mind, or the collective mind, or a group's mind, right? You get to understand that. You get to see that. So when you hear me say something like, the reason why you don't understand this, or the reason why this is difficult to see, because you live within a society that actively suppresses your awareness, that actively suppresses your ability to formulate thoughts and to create sequential thoughts and sequential ideas, and especially within a familial situation, or familial scenario, you live within a society that actively seeks and actively works to keep you divided from your natural counterpart. You see? So when you hear me say things like that, and it seems like, oh, he's just conspiracy theorist, or who's he talking about? you know, um, Maybe sometimes you end up dismissing it, and perhaps the dismissing of that information is a part of, that plan. You know, Sometimes it's easier to discredit someone as paranoid or crazy, or just disillusioned, when they say something that is outside the purview of our own circumference of accumulated uh, information. So what I wanted to hit upon and kind of look at is the idea of how regimes are brought about and changes are brought about within the mythology and within the psychology of the Anglosphere. And I've mentioned this before, so I know I said it about 3 times, but I want to make it clear. but I'm gonna expound on it a little bit more within the context of the stumbling blocks that many of us have, or the stumbling block, which is an egoic stumbling block. And to understand, when I say ego, a lot of times when we speak about ego, we just speak about people who may be boisterous, or people who are selfish, or people who perhaps are they see themselves beyond others and above others, and they put their own self-interest first. And you know those may be symptoms of a wayward ego, but that's not actually evidence of someone who's solely operating from the ego. A lot of times when we define things, unfortunately, we define them by the effects that it has on us, and not necessarily from an objective standpoint. So many of you I know have probably, because it's just a part of the it's a part of the conscious, awakened, shifting awareness community welcome kit, especially those who are studying information that come out of the urban environments. Many of you may be aware of the concept of the straw man or the dead man, right? And of course, we know for those of you who know. For those of you who don't know, look it up. It will be it's good information for you to have and for you to study beyond the cursory explanation I'm going to give right now. So let me say that. But straw man, real easy, is not the real you. It's the corporation that was created by you unknowingly when you were born, and when your birth certificate was handed into the state. And the capital letters of your name now signifying that corporation, or that straw man, or that hollow man, or that dead man, but not necessarily referencing the organic person, the organic woman, or the organic man, or of course the organic child. But the movement and the navigation that you experience through this particular legislative and commercial society is done by your straw man. It's not done by your real self. It's done by the fake self, the illusioned self. So it's like a false illusion that's created in your name, a false representation of yourself, right? So with that, the ego is just like that. The ego is what we operate from when we're still asleep. You see, so I know I referenced this movie several times. I'm gonna use it again because it's in my mental. I guess I need to go watch it again, but it's in the forefront of my consciousness. The Matrix, right? And we have several movies that are similar, like that. Even They Live is a good movie that kind of explains this old movie from John Carpenter. But Dark World is another one. There's a lot of them, that have this type of idea. Even Night of the Living Dead. But the idea that we may live within a world that we are not completely and actively creating as we're going through it, because we're asleep. So while we're asleep, there's a representation that takes over for us. There's a representation of us that operates for us in our name, but it's not actually us. You see, very similar to when you apply for credit, and you personally, your personal credit or credibility is not looked at. Your straw man or your hollow man credit history is looked at. You see, well, you owe this loan and you took this out, and then sometimes you may look at your credit report and see things on there that you've never done. So no, this isn't me. I never took out a loan here, or a car loan here, or a mortgage here, and you find out there's a mistake on it. So someone has been using your hollow man while you were not looking at it, while you were not aware of it, while you did not monitor it, because you were asleep to it. You see. So it's the same thing when we're dealing with the ego. When we're still asleep, like we're in the pods in the Matrix. There's a self, a projected self, a residual idea of what we think we are, that operates in our place. Kind of like there's a robot that will take over. If you fall asleep at the wheel, there's an autopilot. There's an auto driving feature that will take over for you. Okay, that's the ego. That's the ego. When you're not driving the ship yourself. Okay, so there's so many different mythologies throughout the world that give rightful and really, I would say, comprehensive understanding of what that egoic body is, and of course what it represents, and why it's important to manage it. You don't necessarily have to do away with it, because it does serve a purpose. Just like you don't necessarily have to kill your straw man once you get into a place where you understand how commercial exchanges work in the Anglosphere or in this society, but you want to reclaim it. You want to own it. So I'm going to own my residual impression of myself, as opposed to allowing society or social architects, let me add the architect in the matrix, to tell me what my residual idea of me is, what my impression of me is, what my image and idea of me is. You see, so as long as you're functioning from that ego, from that unawakened self, which a lot of us do, we refer back to it, as our standard and as our guiding point. That's why sometimes, when you're asked questions, uh, you go back to your history. In particular, the time before you were awakened. So I may say something like, maybe in your learning, I'll say, it's time for you to learn to be free. We'll just take a simple statement. And then you may respond and say, I've never felt free. I've never been free. I don't know how to do that. But you're birthed and you come from a place of freedom. But your hollow self or your egoic self doesn't know freedom because it's a robot. So now, which one just answered that question, or answered or responded to the statement? You see, but you use it as your history without understanding that that's not your history. That's your robot's history. It's just like you may have a computer in your home. You don't necessarily look at that computer in your home and look at the upgrade history or the operating system history of your computer and claim it as your own. You recognize that computer or that terminal to be something that you're utilizing in order to navigate a certain world, the digital world, right? But it's not necessarily your personal history. You have your own history that you can control and you can move, and you can even get rid of that computer if you want at some point and get a new one, get a whole new operating system. See, sometimes we're attached to our residual imprint. We're attached to the residual idea of who and what we think we are. And we don't realize that we can get rid of that. We can do away with our history if we so choose to. You see? So a lot of times that's where the confusion comes in. We have a little trouble discerning what ego really is. Like I said, a lot of times thinking it's someone being selfish, or someone being boisterous, or someone being arrogant, or putting their own concerns and needs above that of others, and we say, oh, that's an egoic person. And like I said, it may be symptoms of the ego, but that's not the ego. So what happens if we have that misconception of what ego truly is, then we may end up still operating from it. We may still operating from the robot or from the projected self, when we should be controlling and managing it, no different than how you control and manage your phone or your computer, or any other digital tool, or just tool that you use in order to navigate a world that maybe you don't want to step inside. Maybe you don't. This is not Tron. I don't want to be inside of my computer. Yeah, I don't want to be completely within the digital world. But sometimes that digital imprint begins to control who and what we are. So when we look at ego and we look at the history, a lot of times the ego, or the sense of ego, or our attachment to what that is, becomes stronger because of time, because of history. And we say, well, I have a history with this person, or I have a history of doing this, or of doing that. So therefore that must be me, because the culmination of my experiences must be me, without understanding that no, the me, was asleep through all of that. You slept the whole ride. You slept all the way from Ohio to Albuquerque, New Mexico. You were asleep in the car. Someone and something else was driving, and you need to give yourself an opportunity to meet that thing that was driving. And it was your chauffeur, and you can tell it where you want to go next, because now you've awoken. You can say, hey, pull over here. I want to go look at this mountain. I want to go look at this can. I want to take some pictures. I want to enjoy this journey. You know, and it may say no at first. It may say, "Ma'am, sir, I think it'd be better that I drive, because I'm trained in this, and I've been doing it all this time, and why would we want to rock the boat? Let's just keep it the way it is." And you say, "No, I can drive my own car." And then the ego will say, "Well, ma'am, sir, I beg to differ. You just woke up, you haven't stretched, and the roads have changed a lot since you drove. And like I said, I'm licensed and certified in this. No, I want to drive my own car." Then it says again, "Ma'am, sir, the last time you drove your own car, you crashed it. And you remember how much that cost you? So now you're afraid. Ooh, I may crash the car. You're right." And you have this conversation very similar to Yeshua having a conversation with the devil in the woods after 40 days and 40 nights of fasting. You're wrestling with yourself. You're wrestling with your own ego. And what are you wrestling for? Control. Control of the ship, control of the car, control of the vehicle. I want control of my own vehicle back. Not you, you don't get that. I get that. You see. So a lot of times when you hear me speak about some of the misconceptions that we hold because of the fact that we live within a society that only wants the hollow man or the straw man or woman, all right, um, to navigate and to control the vehicle. And because of that, when you're given new information, you're resistant to it. I'm not saying that because I'm complaining because you're not growing, because you're not listening to what I'm saying. I'm trying to help you to understand, no different than when I did the show on the overlords, trying to help you to understand that your moment of harvesting has been taken away from you. And you're planting and you're plowing the fields, and something else is harvesting, you know, um, the produce and the food that you grew for yourself, because you don't even realize that you're farming for someone else. You're not farming for yourself, and you've been given a subset of protocols, directives, and thoughts to operate from. It's a very, very, very insidious scheme if you really look at it. So why is this put in place, right? Because I know a lot of times we like to look at parasitical elite and say they're just wicked people. No, like I said, if I was a parasitic elite, I'd be doing the same thing and even more. Who doesn't want to maintain control? Who doesn't want to stay on top? And you start to learn the things that you can do to stay on top. you know so if I was in that position, and everyone's not evolved and enlightened, and say, well, why can't we just all share? Well, you do have communism, but you know but in order to understand this more, I wanted to look a little bit, or show and share a little bit, the mythology that some of this paranoia, or some of this ambition is born from. You see, let's look at Kronos. Okay. Now you've heard me say this name before. I know you have. Kronos. Sometimes Kronus, Kronus, All the same person that's being referred to, just with different spellings. And um, we know that Kronos was a child of the sky and the earth. Okay. Sky and the earth gave birth to Kronos. At that time, the sky was called Anu, which later became Anu, later became Uranus, and the earth was called Ge, which later became Gaia. Ge, similar to your Kemetic Geb. Okay. And Anu, or Uranus, or Uranus, as you hear some people say. I like to say Uranus, though. Just sounds funnier. But Uranus was considered to be the evening sky or the night sky, you see, similar to your Kemetic newt, right? So it was said that, Uranus or Anu and Gaia, they get together, they have a child. Child is Kronos, you know, and Kronos is what we call a Titan, and they had other children too, Um, I was Kronos was one of the children. They had 6 children altogether, and the 6 is a significant number, very significant number. You see how it begins to tie into other things, but Kronos was a real interesting kind of ruler at that time because he was very concerned about being overthrown by his children in particular. So what he used to do was eat them. He had a wife, Rhea. Rhea was another Titan, or Ray, right? Ray. Ray, is a cognate of Ra. So he had this wife, Rhea, and he had all of these children. And the last child he had, the youngest child, Rhea tricked him. And when he went to eat the child, she gave him a stone, but saved Zeus, you see. And Zeus later on overthrew his father, you know, with the help of some of his brothers and sisters who were still in his father's belly at the time. Okay. So when you look at this idea here, you know, again, like I said, if you want to understand the psychology of a people, study the psychology of those same people. Study the mythology of those people. You see, mythology creates the mind. It's like the idea, does art reflect life or vice versa? And it is vice versa. It's a cyclical and symbiotic exchange. Okay, so when you study the artistic expressions of an individual's mythology, you get to learn their mind, even if that mythology is co-opted from another place. Like I said, of course, Gaia was originally gay, GE, and of course that comes from Geb. I mean, it's just obvious. Anu, Anu, which later became Uranus. You know, um, these are thoughts and ideas and templates that existed far before uh, Grecian society. Although original Grecian society was not as light as has been depicted to us. It's almost like original native society. It wasn't as light it wasn't as red, let's say that, as has been depicted to us. But in any event, someone can still co-opt a story, but then they mutate it and they twist it and contort it to fit their own story, which is not that's not wicked. There's nothing evil about that. It's one of the things I speak about often when I refer to Santeria. And people say, well, yeah, they use Catholic saints and this and that. They should. If I'm classified and known as a Puerto Rican or as a Cuban, and I want the deities that I work with to look more like me. There's nothing wrong with that. Now some don't. Some are like, nah, I want the African deity. It depends on how you see yourself when you look in the mirror. Some people look in the mirror, they see something different. I am a staunch advocate of that. I've seen it. You got someone who could be the lightest of light with the bluest of eyes and the fairest of hair, but when they look in the mirror, they see a more. I have a associate like that. She's well, she would be classified because we like the color code. She would be classified as white. If you saw her, most people. Thank you for the breaking up notice. Thank you. It should be fixed by now. Right. But if you saw her, she would be classified as white, right? And I saw her recently. We were talking, and she has this body that looks very indigenous, big hips, you know, round behind, just the way she moves, certain kind of rhythm, you know, um, and I'm still breaking up. All right, let's see. Let's see if I can fix it. Yeah. Okay. Huh. That's weird. I'm still breaking up. Maybe hmm. Maybe it's on YouTube side. Maybe that's the problem. Or maybe there's a delay. Because it should be good. Mm. Still breaking up. If it is, I'm just gonna just talk with it being broken up. All right. Well, I think there's a delay. I think that's part of what it is. It may have cleared up, but I think it's still delayed. I think that's the issue. I think because your chat notifications of breaking up are coming through, um, kind of delayed. Okay. Yeah, I think that's something on the YouTube side. All right. So the static. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. Um. Oh yeah. Let me do this. Let me try something else. Okay. So maybe that's a little better. All right. I tried something completely different. May have improved, got a little better. If so, just let me know. If not, just let me know. Yeah, but it should have fixed. I did my usual, you know, fixes. But yeah, there's a delay. Okay, I see what it is. Yeah, there's a delay. Okay, you're on real time, Michelle. You say okay. All right, so I'm gonna keep it going. I don't think it's on my side because I did everything that I usually do to get it working. And it still seems like it. So perhaps it will pass. Yeah, it will probably pass. Okay, so let me just do this too, just in case. So anyway, like I said, it's an individual, very, very shapely. When I say shapely, shaped like an indigenous woman. And um, for the first time, I've known her for quite a while. For the first time, she finally said something about it. I can't remember. I don't delay and static, but we can hear you. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it's doing that. Um, it should have fixed by now. Usually by now it would have fixed, but I don't know. It might be some on YouTube, or maybe because of what we're speaking about. YouTube is becoming a very interesting place in terms of the difficulty certain messages are having reaching the ears of the people now. People having videos flagged and shut down and all kinds of things. A lot of people are leaving. But nothing lasts forever, right? But in any event, so she said something. I don't know how the subject came up of her shape. I don't know. I don't even remember how it came up, but nonetheless, we were joking about it. And she said, you probably didn't. I've known her for a long time. She said, oh, I guess I never told you. She said, I'm Sicilian. And that's all I needed to hear. I said, ah. And then she said, this is a woman who would be color coded and color classified as white. Because, like I said, we're heavy into our color coding. She said, I'm black on the inside. I said, okay, it's kept it moving, because if many of you, if you don't know about the African presence, in Sicily, it will be time for you to learn about it. It's important, learn about the miscegenation and the conquest that occurred in Rome. When Hannibal did, and he left all these little black babies. So that made sense. As soon as she said, "Oh, I didn't, yeah, I'm Sicilian," then it was like, "Oh, okay, made sense." So sometimes do I got so distracted over here working, trying to get the static out of the line, which it seems we still haven't got out of the line. Let me try. Oh, let me try this. I messed up. Tell me if it's better now. I'm gonna take it really down to the tilt. Right. Basically started it over again. Hopefully, maybe that fixed it. I don't know. Joreem says, like I said before, every time you start fire spitting, it starts messing up. That's the Illuminati stuff. Yeah, perhaps. You know, maybe it's the energies around you saying, "No, you're gonna work for this. You're giving this away too easy. You're gonna work for this one." So you have to now strain through all of the bad audio. Perhaps there's some of that happening too. Still the same. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's I think it's on YouTube side because usually by now, with me doing all of those different things that I just did, it would have been fixed by now. So I'm gonna say that this is a new kind of static. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say this might be a new kind of static that we're experiencing because usually it would have been fixed by now. All right. So I'm just gonna get into it. Hopefully it can be heard, and I don't know what it sounds like on your side because I can't hear it. But anyway, so we were talking about Kronos and Saturn. Um, I'm not even sure why I brought up the Sicilian woman and the color coding, and I was speaking about. It's better now. Okay, thank you. I'm divine. All right, clear now. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I restarted a bunch of things just now. So anyway, so I don't even know why I brought her up and the whole idea and how we color code. So we're just gonna skip and move back past that. Once I started talking about that, the sound started breaking up, so I ended up getting distracted. But anyway, so we had this idea, right, of Kronos, and and how Kronos, overthrows his father, and how he we have this symbolism, of course, of the Titans, and the Titans overthrowing Kronos. Kronos, of course, where we get chronology. So Kronos represents time, or who we call Father Time, and of course Kronos and Saturn are essentially the same person, but we'll get into that in a moment. But in any event, one of the things that Kronos carried was a sickle, you know. Um, and the sickle, like what we use to harvest with, and like if you do some study on, like, symbolism of Kronos, it will tell you that. Okay, so Charles Evans says you were talking about a deity that is connected to time, Kronos, and chronology. Then you had a time delay. Yeah, look at that. So the sickle, a lot of times you look it up, they'll say, "Oh, that represents the harvest and how we harvest things in due time." Right? That's not correct. That's a lie. That's not what the sickle represents. The sickle is what he would use to castrate people. Okay, with and representing ending and killing their regenerative ability. In fact, it was the same sickle that his children used to kill him. They cut his body up into 1,000 pieces when they went to fight him. So a lot of times we use that sickle and we say, "Oh, that represents the agrarian aspects." Of being able to harvest. But um, no, it was actually he used that same sickle to castrate Anu, or castrate Uranus. Yeah. So thank you, Charlambos. Charlambos said you began breaking up when you said the lady says she is a Moor. Yeah, but I still don't remember why I was making that connection. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. You know. Um, but again, just to throw an aside, never judge a book by its cover. Talk to people. You know, because if you saw her walking down the street, you'd probably just say, "Oh, that's a white lady," and you might look at her and say, "Huh, that's a white lady with a nice shape." You probably would say something like that. But when she made that, she said, "Oh, I never told you I'm Sicilian." And everything made sense as soon as she said that. Because I know her, and I know a bit about her life and, some of the things she's done and even been through and stuff like that. And when she said, "Oh, no, I'm Sicilian," she didn't have to say anything after that. But she knew the history. Because she said, and she said while she was walking away, which was funny. So it wasn't even like, it was just a matter of fact statement. She said, "Oh, I never told you, yeah, I'm Sicilian." She said, "Yeah, I'm black on the inside," and walked away. you know, but yeah, sometimes we don't realize how far spread and how interconnected many of us are because we're taught to judge things in a way that we shouldn't judge things. We're limited in that sense. But again, those things are given to us by society for the purposes of maintaining division. But in any event, so you have this idea of Kronos or time, of course, right? As I have just shared, and even what a little bit of what his symbolism represents, and that sickle that he used was made of gold, and he used it to castrate. So you start looking at some of these different things and these different mythologies. Like I said, again, you want to understand the psychology of people, you have to understand the mythology of the people, right? Um, so what we start to see that there's a history here within this culture of leaders or rulers being overthrown. It's actually ingrained in the very quote unquote religions or the spiritual institutions of the ideas of new regimes being brought about through violent overthrowing, right? So once you're working with that, you realize that you have to put certain things in place in order to prevent that from happening, of course, to keep that from happening, because you don't want to be dethroned. And the movement of Saturn, or we could say Uranus or Anu to Kronos is a dethroning, right? Because Kronos goes at his father and castrates him, cuts off his ability to regenerate, you see. And then his child, Zeus, goes at Kronos, cuts him up. You see, if you look at the movie, it was Clash of the Titans, and there was a second one, Return of the Titans. Maybe I don't know. I'm making it up now, but it's the second one, whatever the name of it, if it was, um, oh, it was about the part after Santeria. There you go. Thank you, Brother Charles. And I was saying that different people's spiritual systems, they are allowed to, for their deities to look like them. Thank you, brother. Now it's coming back. Thank you. So sometimes we look at Santeria and say, "Oh, but they're using European Catholic saints." Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, just like if I'm an Aztec, my deities can look like Aztecs. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone doesn't have to bow down and pray to a deity with Africoid features. It doesn't make it real in that sense. But because ultimately your first conception ideation of a deity is your parents anyway. So where you came from is really going to be your first conception of that. So if your archetypes or your energies or your elementals look like your parents, that's fine. That's not inherently evil. Like I said, there are thousands of creation stories that exist around the world, and they're all valid. They're all real. We're created and we're born out of many different circumstances and scenarios. So even as I'm sharing these Grecian tales, um, regimes and dynasties that they created oftentimes were created, from overthrowing who was already in position and dethroning who was in position. Okay, so is it valid? Absolutely. It is a valid part of their story. Okay, those who come under that line, who consider Greece, Grecian culture or Roman culture uh, to be their mother culture, to be the root from which they sprang, then these stories are very significant, of course. Now, if you're under the if you're within the domain or the dominion or the kingdom of those who come from those cultures, then these stories are also significant to you because you start to understand the psychology and the reason why certain laws are put in place or certain psyops are put in place. Certain mind control initiatives are put in place. What the concern is, what the fear is, what the paranoia is. You see, because as it's ingrained within the mythology of those same individuals, so it's important to understand their mythology. No different than when you have missionaries who go to the continent and learn continental languages and continental stories and mythologies, and then somehow afterwards always seem to be able to convert the people into their way. It's their ability to sympathize with their story by learning it. You know, it gives them a measure. Like I said, self-awareness uh, makes you aware of your actual purview of power. You see, and the only awareness is self-awareness. So when you go and you learn a story about someone on a continent, say, "Oh, what's your mythology? What's your God's name? And how did that God come into being? And how were you created? So forth and so on." Then you can easily say, "Wow, well, that's similar to the God of my book." But the God of my book is the God of all gods. You can start picking picking apart their story. And people sadly get confused very quickly, and sometimes the dethroning occurs that way. Sometimes the castration occurs that way. It's different ways to castrate a person. You don't have to always take out the golden sickle and get to chopping. So the idea again, you know, being present that we're speaking of this idea of like I said, of dethroning, and you know sometimes we miss and don't realize that you know there's certain fears and concerns based on what certain people represent. So let's look at that for a second. The Romans had an archetype, Saturn, right? And no different, we know that Saturn has the rings around it. So just it's no different when you get married. Those of you who are wearing marital rings, a lot of you probably are, that marital ring represents the ring around Saturn. So when you get married and you put that ring on one another, you're actually giving energy. It's a ritual to the deity or the archetype Saturn, or Saturnalia. You see, so there are things that we do and we don't realize who and what we're feeding or who and what we're suppressing in that sense. So when we look at Saturn, for instance, where again you get the word Satan or you get the word satisfy, and you're told to stay away from Satan, right? And your upbringing, of course. I'm saying stay away from Satan. Satan's no good. Satan's the bad guy, so forth and so on, right? And you start to understand, well, we're talking about Saturnalia here. We're talking about the deity of Saturn. Well, why is there so much fear there? That once was your ruling deity. Well, you start to understand what each deity represents, and especially in terms of the dethroning and overthrowing of a particular, you know, era. We want to look at it like that. Um, so, and I know you were told the ring represents your endless and unbreakable bond of love. I know. I heard it. Heard it all before. Sunshine Anderson. So yeah, I know. I know. But um sometimes we're just not told the truth. Sometimes there's more to the story than we were given, you know. And in ancient times, Saturn was referred to as El, El, El. That's where it gets interesting, right? El. You've heard that term before. Especially when I've told you, like, El is correlates with Al. You know, they got words with L in it, like Israel, Aziel, Uriel, Mikael, you know, Al, Allah, right? El and Al, Elohim, which is the most significant one in this scenario. El is all over the place. You have it all over the place, but that supreme archetype, El, was the deity known as Saturn or Saturnalia. So you start to get an idea where um, this came from. Like I said, you're dealing with co-opted tradition or co-opted traditions. So if we're looking at the idea of Saturn or L, it's good to look at the representations. Now, you know that Saturn is sixth planet from the sun. Six. Remember, I used the number six before when I said that all in all, there were six children made. And again, remember Saturn, satisfy, Set, Satan, Seth, you know. So Saturn is represented by a black cube. Black cube. Very similar to the cube that you see in what is it, Deep Space Nine, when they show you the Borg, and the Borg seeks to assimilate everyone, right? And say I must assimilate, and they make everyone the same. Well, I had brought that up recently when I was talking about the Matrix, and I said, yeah, Agent Smith, he was like the god of this world, seeking to assimilate everyone and everything and make it just like him. Mm. They should have just made him black. They should have had him played by Idris Elba or something like that. Then it would have made a lot more sense. But anyway, so like I said, you have that L where you see like Raphael, Gabriel, Uriel, Aziel, Israel. You start to see, okay, what an L is, even in the word that we use when we say elder, right? There's a sacred divinity to the idea of an elder. We have political officers, that we elect. We elect them. You see, we elevate them. Elevate. We elevate them. You even have what's called the gospel. Gospel. L. L is all over the place, man. You can't get away from it. Disciple. Yeah, L is critical. It's significant. So you start to see the interweaving of a person's mythology, all over the place. And you know, even we have a day of the strong that we call Saturday, right? Where of course, you know, the Seventh Day Adventists, they advocate that the Sabbath is on a Saturday, and we should be worshiping, or people should be worshiping, I guess, and not everyone. Those who are 7 Day Adventists should be worshiping on that day, on that Saturday, you know. But we also know that Saturnalia died on what they called Saturni, which means Saturn's day, you know. But so now, knowing all of this and knowing that all of this mythology is present, and all of these words and these ideas are present in the temple of your mind. Tempel. Tempel. I can just keep doing this all day. I told you it gets fun after a while when you learn these things, and you see him, you open, it's like, I guess it's like the movie when he opened his eyes, and uh, Keanu Reeves asked, said, "Why do my eyes hurt?" And Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne, says, "Because you've never used them before." When you finally open up your eyes, and you say, "Oh my goodness!" Like when they were in the car, and he said, "I used to buy noodles at that place." You see, now he stepped outside of his straw man, and he's saying, "My hollow man, I was asleep while I was over there buying these noodles and thinking it was me." So I'm recalling memories in a history that technically is not even mine. So it gets very interesting at that point, So when I'm laughing, it's just, um, there's a part of me that is tickled by the idea of dismantling some of the engineering and the programming that has been so meticulously strung and woven together to keep you confused. It's almost like Oshun when she laughs, and because she's weaving together the illusion of the world and she's beautifying it and making it gorgeous, and she laughs because it's just all a game. Because what she's doing is drawing you while at the same time distracting you from the true spirit of the thing that lives inside. You know, you can't help but laugh. It's a tickling. There's a tickling, a divine tickling that goes on. But in any event, so we're looking at this mythology here of Saturn and of Kronos and the idea of the Titans who, you know, were made from the ashes of this dethroning. That's important to understand when you look at the ashes. What are ashes? Soot, carbon, black. You see, you start to understand more why Saturn is represented by that black cube, and what the significance of those ashes mean and the significance of the number six, you see. And why we're told that it's the number of man, we got that 666, you know. Um, but in any event, and those who are tuning in a little late, let me bring us back to what we're speaking about, because I know it may seem like this is a show on mythology, and it's not. We're talking about actually the ego and how sometimes, or maybe not sometimes, but why all the times we end up getting drawn away and snatched away from that which we would understand, because there were certain mechanisms that are put in place to keep us in a certain place so that we can't overthrow the powers that be. So there's a certain way of thinking that's put in place. And what I'm explaining in this segment is why that paranoia or why that fear is in place. Because again, I'm saying again, I know this is probably the seventh time I'm saying it, so please forgive me. But to understand the psychology of a people, you must understand the mythology of that people. So if you want to understand the psychology of the parasitic elite and why they're so fearful and they're so paranoid about maintaining and keeping power, it's important to understand where their mythology comes from. You see, where it comes from. Why is it that they're saying the things that they say? Why is it that there's an aggressive campaign to flip everything upside down so that you can never understand anything? You see, and that's why I often say, just take whatever they give you and turn it around, turn it upside down. It's no different than when you look at maps of the continent. It's upside down. They tell you that the north is this way and the south is this way. But those of us who've studied a little bit by now, you probably know that what we call northern Africa is actually southern Africa. And what we call southern Africa is actually northern Africa. Is because you had a certain people there who wanted to implant themselves into the geographic story and point certain things towards them. You see, they said, "Well, hey, we're closer to the north. Let's point ourselves there, because when we look at the north is always considered to be the higher point or the more pinnacle point. That's why we spend so much time studying Kemet, but not enough time studying Uganda. That's where the real mystery is." But that's for another show. But anyway, so you have this concept of the six, and of course we're told stay away from the six, right? You hear that number. I've been in checkout lines and prices have come up to 666, and people are like, oh no, 666, right? Which of course relates us back to the idea of Saturn. It gives you even an idea of the divinity of things. You look at 666, of course, we understand that human DNA is made up of 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons, and then we're told that that's the number of man, right? Or the mark, which is, I shouldn't say or, the number of man, the mark of the beast. Okay. Now, anyway, so the idea of the six and what human DNA is composed of, and Saturn, you start to understand why, okay, Saturn is associated with Satan, and how is it that, or how it is that you had these deities that rose from the ashes, of an overthrowing, or rose from the ashes of a dethroning, excuse me, in that sense. And um, we may look at the story and we say, well, hey, man, somebody castrates their own father and eats their children, excuse me. And sometimes it's important for us to pull back and take a look at that. I say, wait a minute, castrated their father and then ate their children. It's important to look at that and say, and this is your story. This is your mythology, huh? This is what you claim. It's important sometimes to pull back because we're so used to hearing some of the most horrific stories, or being exposed to some of the most horrific realities that we don't really sometimes sit back and look at it and say, man, um, maybe something's off here. Maybe something that we're being told to accept is not really what we should be accepting. Maybe that's not really a part of my mentality, and perhaps if I stay close to a mentality like that, I'll end up behaving the same way. Maybe those thoughts and concepts will infiltrate my own psyche because that's not really my story. That's not what I'm co-signing there. You know, so it's important that we sometimes look at the things that are put in place, and like I said, the psychological institutions that are put in place in order to keep us from actually learning anything, in order to keep us from actually growing. And when you look at the mythology here, of course we're looking at Kronos, and like I said, and we're looking at Father Time, who we like to call Father Time, and you know, who of course was a Titan, being a descendant or a child of Gaia and Uranus. You know, it's important to understand that these stories. We look at Kronos, who also was Saturn, and we see that his son Zeus imprisoned him. He overthrew him, and then he imprisoned him. He put him in Tartarus. Now, again, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was either the first or the second one. I know Clash of the Titans, the second one covered this. It might have been like Return of the Titans, and I always loved Clash of the Titans from the first one that came out back in the '80s. I don't know if you all remember that one, but I like I like any story about gods getting killed and overthrown. I find that type of information to be very interesting, and especially when you look at your own story, and you know that there's overlords that are present, and the idea of being able to reclaim and insurrect and reclaim your positioning, and to no longer be lorded over has always interested me. But we look at, again, time being imprisoned, or Kronos or Saturn, again being that six protons, six neutrons, six electrons, 12 being the number of carbon, making up about only 98% of everything that exists, tangible or living, I should say, in our world. But you see that this individual known as Saturn is imprisoned by his own children or his own son. You see, so you start to look at, well, hey, there are maybe people who were birthed, like, again, like we say, we look at Grecian mythology, we look at Roman mythology, and we see that it's a co-opting of course, the African mythology. There's no secret there. We don't have to tiptoe around that one. But who has who imprisoned at this point? And when time is imprisoned in that sense, the dimension of time, we can't really experience it in the fullness of what it's supposed to represent. So now time becomes a very linear thing because you imprison it now, and now you can control it and determine what it should be and what it's going to be. You see, even your ideas of being satisfied, even your ideas of what your Satan will be, even, and Set or Satan representing the time, but not but your material existence. That means, and your material existence is only determined by the way you think about it. So we're talking about thoughts. Your thoughts are imprisoned by those who overthrew you, your own children. Well, we know who the original parent race is. There's no secret there. Again, we don't have to tiptoe around that. I'm not saying anything that, general scientists have not told you. But you become imprisoned by your own progeny. And then they determine the scope and the movements of your own thought and how you will process and determine what time is. You see? So now when you're introduced to new information, it becomes very difficult to push past it. Because, of course, all of these stories in this mythology exist inside of your own psyche. Okay. So it's just explanations as to why you may think the way you think. And especially, again, if you're taking on the psychology of someone else, then this becomes your story. The imprisonment becomes real, but you have to learn and have to know how to, I guess, as we say, connect the dots, right? You have to learn how to connect the dots in that sense. So I'm gonna go to something real quick. I saw some questions in the chat room. I saw it right in front of me. So Charles Lumbos Mark said, "Is that why the Kaaba has a cube? Because of El or Allah?" Absolutely, absolutely. Kaaba, which is an earlier cognitive of the word Kabbalah. Okay, Kaaba means cube and Allah. Cube and Allah gives you Kaaba. And if you look at the Kabbalistic tree of life, right, what you'll see in the first, let me picture it in my head, first six, yep, the first six Sephiroth, excluding the Ath, which is the unseen or the hidden Sephiroth. When you connect the lines to the first six, yeah, I said six again for a reason, you will see that when you connect the lines of those Sephiroth together, you create a cube. There's your Kaaba. You create a cube. Six, once again. Okay, so, Brother Charles Lombos, yeah. And of course, L, like I said, yeah, L is one of the earlier names of Saturn. But yeah, Kaaba is cube and Allah. So it's Kabbalah that we end up saying later, which is the combination. And basically that means, the cube of the supreme or the cube of the most high. Again, just like the cube that you see in Star Wars Deep Space Nine. Again, these things are all around you. Saturn was also called the Lord of the Rings. I don't know if any of you know that, but I'm sure by now you have heard about or have even read the Lord of the Rings. Yes, down at Tifereth. Okay, so yeah, you know the tree. Okay, so I can tell you. Let me see. I do it in my head. So we got Kether, that would be the top of the cube, and Tifereth would be the bottom of the cube. And if you're counting down, you would go from the first cube Tifereth. I'm sorry, the first cube Kether. To the right you have Chokmah. To the left you have Bina. Then going straight down from Bina, like I'm not good at drawing, but if we're drawing lines. Actually, we draw the line like this. We would go from Kether to Bina. Then draw a line to Geberah. Then draw a line to Tifereth. Then draw a line to Chesed. Then draw a line back up to Chokmah. Then draw a line back up to Kether, and then create a line from Chokmah to Da'ath, and then from Bina to Da'ath, and then from Da'ath to Tifereth. Now, if you create a line in the same formation, or lines And the same information that I just said, I just did it with a stick of incense on a piece of paper. So, but if you use a pen and if you do it that way, you'll see that it forms a cube. Okay, it forms a cube. So there's your Kab or Kaaba. All right, and again, utilizing those six Sephiroth. So again, of course, you have the idea of the six, which is ever present. So yeah, so the paranoia and the fear that exists within the society to keep you mentally locked down is to keep you from overthrowing the society, because the mother culture and the mother mythology of the society that you live within is birthed from overthrowing. You see, that's why it's always wars. Somebody's always trying to dethrone someone else, and if you know that this and within this society or this culture that you're the idea of you as indigenous people, you are imprisoned, just like Saturn or Satan is imprisoned in Tartarus. You know, sure, you're more than welcome, brother Mark or brother Charles Lambos. You're more than welcome. If you see that that energy is imprisoned, you start to understand why you're imprisoned and why you can't be let out so easily or so quickly. And again, that representing thought, Saturn, Satan, satisfy, satiate. You know, when we want to satisfy the body or the flesh, it's because of thoughts. Fulfillment is different. You know, so your thoughts have been imprisoned. Your thoughts have been encaged. Like I said, sometimes you just got to flip things upside down. You know, that sometimes that's the easiest way to understand, because I know sometimes it could seem a little complicated. Like, man, where do we begin? You know, where do we start? There's just so many things that have been locked into us in terms of our thinking, and sometimes it's very hard to figure out the first steps to get out. You know, the first steps to release ourselves from some of the things. And you know, like I said, man, just do the opposite of what you've been taught. Start there, because there's nothing that you've been taught that's for your benefit. Everything that you've been taught to keep you from overthrowing the current regime. Real simple, right? That's all it is. You've been taught these things so you will not overthrow the current system that's in front of you. Okay? Any questions you may have, feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to get ready to head out of here in a moment, but you know, I like to give you a moment to get your questions and things like that together. I'm gonna scanned. I'm gonna scan real quick the chat and see if there's anything that was posted earlier that I may have missed. All right, so I'm gonna give you an opportunity to do that, and I'll be right back in like 1 minute. All right.
Severed from the traditions of our legacy, we now embrace alien philosophies, looking at our rituals with suspicion, disconnected from our divine foundation. We hope instead of know, wish as opposed to acknowledge, anticipate as opposed to create, worship instead of invoke, choking on the phlegm of oppression, suffocating from the ignorance of indigenous wisdom. Forgot our chants, rituals, and rhythms, forgot our initiation systems, forgot about the patriarchal order, forgot the sacred role of water. Connected to being nigga, what happened to our warriors? What happened to the healer magicians and drummers? What happened to our shaman, jollies, and dancers? Do we prefer to be ass shakers and gangsters? Giving props to Socratic methods while blatantly ignoring Imhotep. From step pyramid to urine stench projects, history ignored as identity neglect. Can't have self-respect without a healthy self-concept. Deep beyond the calcified, corroded psyche exists a true you, sitting in the lotus position, meditating on liberation, raising your spirit vibration while disintegrating images of self-destruction. First eye to soul, revealing your purpose through visualization.
All right. I think I'm back. Hopefully, if there's no sound issues. Um, I just needed that minute to scan a little bit. So I see Nicole Mass said, you know, my son's listening, and he said I knew that 666 was not a bad number. Nope, it's not. In fact, I was trying to drop a little hint about 666. You know, in terms of what it means. You know, for you as maybe an indigenous person, and again, why you're told to stay away from it, and things like that. So the number six is good to look at because first of all, six is sex, and through the combination, or through the recombining of our sex, and through the recombining, where we get that serpent to stand up, which is like what we do in the nine, right? And our nine time, with the six, the bottom coil of that serpent is still, is still coiled up, and in the nine, which is his complement, we see that of course in the zodiacal archetype. But in the nine, it stands up, very similar to the letter P. I know I didn't promise, but I said at some point I would do a show on numbers. It will happen at some point. But yeah, the 666 is important. That's technically what I'm saying. That's your number, because that's the number of carbon. You see, that's the number of carbon. So I'll give you another example for those of you who, like I said. Remember, I was doing the show recently, and I was saying that a lot of times, we don't realize that we can practically take any system. If we take it seriously, we can take any system and learn the things that we need to learn. You see, but we'll take major religions, and because we were given a twisted understanding of them, we shun them all and say, "Oh man, they're all here just to confuse me," and things like that, man, and without really realizing that no, it's not that. If you really study them, any of them, anyone, take any one of them, and you study them earnestly, they're either going to lead you out of the nonsense, you know, um, or they're going to cause you to find the deepness within that particular system, right? So uh, that idea of the six, or the 666, like I said, it really being that carbon atom, because it connects it to the carbon atom. The carbon atom is 12, but again, you got the six protons, six neutrons, six electrons, and we know that life here, at least here, is it's carbon based. But you have that triplicity there. You start to understand. Okay, well, that means the carbon is an important piece. A lot of times we associate with carbon with the idea of melanin. Well, carbon, the word itself, comes from the Latin word carbo. Carbo means coal, or like charcoal. I don't know if any of you have ever seen coal or charcoal. At one point, I had a coal burning uh, stove, and you touch charcoal. We used to have to load it up with coal. I love doing that, man. I love the way the coal looks. It's shiny on the inside. It looks almost like charcoal, except it's not dull. It's shiny. But that's what the word actually, carbon means. So when you see the idea of the coal or charcoal, a lot of time being interwoven into your mythology, pay attention to it. Pay attention to it, because they're talking about carbon. Because remember, again, in Latin, carbon would be coal or charcoal, okay, or carbo, as it said. So, like I was saying, a lot of times we have systems where we see these things. I'm gonna tell you one of the early places that I saw it. I knew about melanin and things like that, from other kind of studies. But I remember years ago reading Isaiah 6:6. Isaiah 6:6. Matter of fact, while I'm here, let me quote it correctly. It's been a while. I'm just looking it up real quick. Okay, so Isaiah 6:6. No, I want the other version. Okay, here it is. Let me see. All right, give me a second, because you know I do not have a Bible handy, as you could probably imagine. Okay, but I remember, but I did remember this because, of course, the numbers. I'm like 6 6, huh? Interesting. I thought we supposed to be scared of that one. But Isaiah 6 6. This is what it says. I'm reading from the King James. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar. I'll read it again, Isaiah 6 6. Amen. Amen. Find it in your Bible. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar. That is Isaiah 6 6. Seraphim, right? No different than that song by Mary J. Blige, right? Remember the chorus? What did she say? Knowing him, loving him, showing him that I'm all him, living and forgiving, and I would do it all again. Genuine, seraphim, sweeter than cinnamon, heaven sent gentleman, sent him here for loving him. That's a song. What's the name of that song? I'm all in, or that was a song by Mary J. Blige that Lauryn Hill had written. All that I can say. Actually, that was the name of it. All that I can say. You know, if you all, I know it's an old school song, right? Some of you may or may not remember it, but anyway, I always remember that song because that seraphim piece. When she said seraphim, genuine seraphim, I said, that's the part that kind of caught my attention. But so you have that in Isaiah 6 6, right? That idea there of the live coal in his hand, right? So we're talking about carbon, and the word seraphim. You do the breakdown on that. They're among the higher. You study your Kabbalah, you learn that the seraphim are high up. And in certain traditions, the seraphim are called by the wrong things. So people say, oh, they're demonic energies and things like that. The word seraphim means the ones that are burnt, or the ones that are burning. Very similar to your Kemet, word Kemet meaning the land of burnt faces. So the seraphims are the burning ones. And again, that Isaiah 6 6, when he says, then one of the seraphim, meaning one of the burning ones, flew to me with a live coal or live carbon in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. And again, that's Isaiah 6 6. You see? So that's what I'm saying, man. Sometimes when you just kind of learn, a little bit about the systems that you sit inside of, man. Because we're talking about dark light being brought, a live coal, live carbon, right? We're talking about it coming from a burning one. That's all light. That's all light. So then you start to understand the Luciferian story a little bit more, and why they associate Lucifer with Satan. Lucifer being the light bringer. You see. Lucifer, you use the word all the time whenever you say the word phosphorus. The word phosphorus and Lucifer are the same word. Meaning that which brings light. That's that which brings light. We'll go back to Isaiah 6 6. Hey, now I feel like I'm doing it. I don't like how this feels. I don't like how that felt. But anyway, the breakdown is there, right? So you start to see a combination of carbon and phosphorus. And I would just urge you, those of you who feel like doing a study, see the relationship of carbon and phosphorus to DNA, or really I should say how it creates DNA. Then it gets super interesting. And you start to understand a little bit how certain systems again are put in place to not only to keep you from knowing these things, but to keep you from rising up. To keep you from dethroning what's been put in front of you. But yeah, it's the words. Like a lot of times when you guys say, how do you understand this? How do you understand that? Sometimes I said, just pick up an encyclopedia. breaking up. Okay, hopefully it clear up now, but thank you for letting me know. Yeah, sometimes it's just picking up an encyclopedia and learning the words. It's not always still breaking up. Well, hopefully it cleared up now. Hopefully it cleared up. Just let me know. But sometimes it's not really a thing of, what ancient secret book did you find in the sand that told, man, sometimes it's like I said, when you come out of the matrix and you open up your eyes, you see things differently. You see things differently. Some of these things you were taught in school, in public school, and you may not have even known what you were being taught. Okay, cool. It cleared up. Thank you. You may not have even known what you were being taught because, of course, of the way it was brought to you. Like I said, phosphorus and Lucifer. Now, you were taught about phosphorus in school. I know you were. Did they tell you they were teaching you about Lucifer or even Heru? Yeah. Look at the word phosphorus. It's spelled Phosphorus. Phosphorus. Split it up. What do you see there? And of course, like I said, I told you the word phosphorus means that which brings light. Well, what does Heru mean? Light, or that which is above. Well, let's look at the word phosphorus. Break it up. Phosp. That's the first part. What's the second part? Horus. What is Horus? Horus. What is Horus? The Greek word for Heru. Phosphorus is the bringer of light. Well, what is Lucifer? We were told Lucifer was the light bearer. Light, luz, lux, lust, light, luster, that which brings light. Mm. Yeah, man, it's deep. It's deep. It's deep. All right, let me go through some of these. See if there's any questions real quick. I'm gonna get out of here. Okay, brother. Well, let me go up. Make sure I get everything. Uh, Curiosio says there was a black cube in the first Transformers movie. Or was it symbolic? You know it was. Come on now, you ain't have to ask that one. You know it was. That spark. I remember that cube. That was that spark they were working with. It's the same cube we're talking about. Transformers is deep, man. That is a deep doggone. I mean, I used to watch a cartoon. The first one was Spike and Bumblebee and everything. I knew it was deep then, you know. But because I was always the Decepticons. I root for the Decepticons. The Decepticons have the right idea. The Autobots are the problem. Autobots. They're the robots. You know, the Decepticons are the ones that they got this thing right. But so yeah, I know, but I think I've saw every Transformer movie. I don't remember because some of them I had to watch them again. But yeah, that cube is the same Kaaba that we're speaking about. Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, Peace, brother Almar. So Michelle says, I feel overwhelmed. I feel like tracing back to undo it all, like doing miles of Christmas light knots. At least I know what not to teach my youth. Yeah, I told you, don't teach them any of this stuff to their adults. That makes it real easy. And then when you start to share it, they'll be able to see if you sound like you're crazy or not. Charlumbo says, how to overcome the fear of choosing the wrong path that may oppose one's destiny. Well, you just need to learn how to overcome fear. Forget all the other stuff. How do I overcome fear? I did a show on fear. Go back and listen to the show, then come back and see if you need to ask that question again. Just do a search on my name and fear. If you don't find it on YouTube, you would definitely find it on Blog Talk Radio. All right. Nicole Love says there's a black cube in Mecca that Muslims worship. Kaaba stone. It's all back. Everything it relates right back to everything I said. Michelle says the black cube is a Saturn worship. There's a huge black cube in the heart of Wall Street. Absolutely, because the Saturn represents wealth. Wealth and finances. Also, in a huge brass upside down compass with a G super discreet. It's right in front of you. That's how you hide things. You put them in plain sight. All right, let's see. Like in the movie They Lived, he saw a different world with the black sunglasses. He had changed perspective. What he looked out into the world with, what he used to look out into the world with. But anyway, I didn't want to make this too much about mythology. I wanted to, well, a little bit, but more so about psychology. And a lot of times when I'm speaking to you guys, why sometimes it's so difficult for you to go from point A to point B, because there's gatekeepers. Because Saturn is known as the gatekeeper, by the way. That's another thing. Saturn is the gatekeeper. So, oh man, I could talk for 6 hours on this one, because that by itself, Saturn being the gatekeeper, that if you understand that concept, then you'll understand how politics work and why melanoid and indigenous people always have to approve of the wicked things that politicians choose to do. They always have to get your approval first before they do something. And they have very crafty and ingenious ways to get you to approve to your own demise. Gatekeepers. But that's a whole nother thing. Like I said, we could talk about this for a long time. But the little portion that I wanted to just really kind of get into was ego, and how a lot of us is still asleep, don't realize it, and why we're asleep. So when I say things like, no, they're keeping you asleep, or you live in a culture that purposely tries to keep you down, it may sound like some usual black power talk. Oh, he's just talking about the man. No, I'm showing you the mythology, of course, because again, you live within a society that worships a culture where gods eat their own children or castrate their own father. So that has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with race. What we're talking about here is just a mentality of fear. You live in a culture where where men would take their sons and have their best friend rape them, which is a form of castration. They would have their best friends rape them in a gymnasium to keep them submissive and keep them from rising up over the authority. Or push their sons out into the street at 13 so their sons wouldn't try to sleep with their mothers sexually. These are the people, this is the mentality that controls your current society. So, of course, if you're coming with a different kind of light, phosphorus, Lucifer, if you're coming with a different kind of light, you're carrying that coal in your hands, like Isaiah 6:6, then of course they're going to suppress that because it could overthrow their regime. And who wants that? I wouldn't want that. I would be doing the same thing. No, I want to stay in power. I want to keep things just as they are. You see? So when I start speaking, sometimes you don't realize how many mechanisms are firing off. That's telling you, no, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Oh, he's a black man. He's Saturn. Keep him in prison in Tartarus. He's a seraphim. You heard what Lauryn Hill sung. Or I'm sorry, not Lauryn Hill. Mary J. Blige. Genuine seraphim. She talked about a man coming into her life and turning everything around. That seraphim coming, the burning one, coming in and carrying that hot carbon, that hot coal in his hand. Man, I could do a breakdown on that song. Forget a movie. I could do a breakdown on that song alone and tell you everything that I just said in this show. Show you how it's right in that song. Sweeter than cinnamon. Man, come on. There's so much in that. Lauryn Hill knew what she was doing when she wrote that song. She knew what she was saying. She knew who the Messiah is. Maybe one day I'll do a breakdown on that word, Mesurah, the Messiah. But yeah, man, like I'm just saying, there are mechanisms that are put in place that makes it very difficult. So a lot of times, like when you guys talk about, yeah, I know you're tired, Chief, or you sounded tired on the show this time. I'm tired. Haru is fighting the darkness. Haru is bringing light. So activating that Haru in me, that's the depleting part, because I'm fighting egos. Egos. That's all I'm fighting are egos. You guys do it sometimes when we're in consultations, and I give you some light. I come with the burning coal. Yeah, but and then you say something stupid that you think is intelligent, but it's not intelligent. It's stupid. And I can't just tell you that was stupid because you're egoic. So I can't be honest with you. I got to say, oh, okay, I understand it, but look at it like this and look at it like, and I got to keep playing this game with you back and forth. And at the end of the day, you don't know what you're talking about, and you're egotistical, and you're asleep. The robot is piloting the ship. I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to your doggone avatar. Would you wake up? So then I might say something harsh, and that wakes you up. What did you just say to me? Ah, here we go. Here we go. All right, come on. You ready to talk? Because you were asleep the whole time. Some of you have gone through these lessons for the past 6 years asleep. That's why your life hasn't changed much. I've had people say it to me, like, almost try to blame me. Like, there's still people who are going through problems and I knew, and they don't have money, or they don't have this, or their marriages are falling apart. It's because you're asleep. You're letting the ego drive. You're being given life. You're giving life-giving lessons here. I know you are. I'm bringing the hot coal or the hot sperm. You're getting it. You're getting the intelligence, the flaming intelligence. You reject it because you can't impregnate a robot. It won't work. A robot has no use for light, for liquid light. Mm-mm. It'll damage its circuitry. So it rejects it. You ain't an Anu. Your straw man is. You're still in the matrix. Told you the matrix is a construct that exists in the mind. We all carry our own version of the matrix. Every single one of us. We all have our own matrix that we're walking in. Some of you call it the astral planes. All right. One more scan and I'm out of here. Yeah, I think I scanned already. Michelle says, I find that my ego tricks me into taking epic actions and making them seem like I am being righteous. I feel like it uses critical thinking as a cloak. Ego is a huge problem for me. Yeah. It hides itself within your consciousness and your righteousness. In fact, when you can say that I'm being righteous, or I've heard people say, I'm a decent person, I'm a good person, all statements of the ego. All statements of the ego. When you make statements like that. You see. Yeah, it's tricky. All right, I'm heading out of here. And this Sunday is the let's think about another lesson I could teach. But this Sunday is the students panel. What you can do is call in on the line that we use for the men's and the women's ministry if you would like to participate in that. Let's see who does it. If the participation is low, I'm going to take a look at it. So I'm going to warn you now. It's not a threat. It's just a warning. If the participation, because you all in our new ministry, you know the number. If it's not what I think it should be in terms of participation, I'm going to kill the end of the month student panel. All right, so I'm just letting you know now. I'm gonna kill it. We're not here to entertain you. I know it seems like it because it's YouTube. That's why I took the group off of Facebook, because once you get onto Facebook, you know there's a certain mentality that's already present. There's colors and symbols there that lock your mind into a certain thing. So you immediately respond a certain way. Just like when you're on YouTube, this is your place to rant and to troll and to all those different things like that. So do you have to join the ministry in order to participate? Yes, you do, Vivid Eye. So the thing is, and again, it's for students to share that information. So if you're a part of one of the classes, our new spiritual training, or any of the classes on the site, then participate. All right. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're not, you're just going to come in to take. Well, I got a question about that. You've had a lot of questions answered all month. 5 shows are strong, and then one on Sunday. You're getting six shows are strong. All right. You're not going to get another opportunity to take some more. So the student panel is an opportunity for you to give back. But if I find that people are not giving back, I'm just going to kill it. Last Sunday of the month, I'll just play a speech. It'd be like, when the substitute, when your teacher's out that day and the substitute is there, what do? They pull out that big uh, metal cart with the big butt TV on it, and they play a movie. That's what we'll do. We'll play a movie on the last Sunday. Hey, so either get in on it, participate and share, or get lost. All right, everyone. Enjoy your day today. Travel safe and be well. All right. SaduluHouse.com for classes. If you want to join the ministry, anulifeglobal.org. And that's how you make it happen. That's how you become a part of what we're doing and start dismantling these egoic parasites that you have inside of your mind that are keeping you locked in, locked in, locked in, locked in, locked in. You know, um, you can get all the light that you want, man. But if you have these mechanisms firing off in your head, as soon as certain triggers come, or as soon as the light bringer comes into the room, which we also call the morning star, by the way. But as soon as the light bringer comes in the room, those mechanisms fire off. Then, hey, man, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere no matter what you surround yourself with in terms of information. So when you see that 666, or you see that Saturn, or you see that Satan, there's already a script that's been put in front of you to say, stay away from that. There's social rules that need to be dissolved that you may not be aware of. All right, I'll see you all very soon. All right, peace.